Are you playing the blame game? You know what it is. I don't even need to describe it. That moment where blame starts getting tossed back and forth and fingers are pointing. I'm in the middle of leading a workshop with a really beautiful group of faculty at WSU Tech, and I'm just going to ask a little bit more context. This is one of the questions that has come up in our group coaching lab, and I'm just going to turn over here for a little bit more context of how that's showing up, and then offer some thoughts and ideas on how to end or transform the blame game into something a little bit more healthy and productive. So now that the intro is given, Lynn, are you willing to add, Lynn and anybody else who was in that group that came up with this question, are you willing to add a little bit of context to that? And if we can start with you, Lynn, and then if somebody else has something to add, go ahead and unmute and share.
When issues come up, I think I'm trying to find a resolution and also what precipitated that issue and make sure it doesn't happen again. And I was thinking maybe it's the way that I'm asking the question is causing people to not be problem solvers, but to point out why someone else was responsible for that or had a hand in that. So just thinking maybe I need to couch my questions a little differently so people don't feel defensive and that I am, pointing fingers, because that's not what I'm trying to do, but maybe I'm not sensitive about that to make sure that they're feeling free to share their view in the park, as Trish Schmidt would say.
Well, let me first affirm you here. There are a lot of leaders on the planet that are really bad at owning their own contribution to a dynamic. And all of what I heard you just do was own your contribution to the dynamic, right? You were like, well, maybe I'm asking questions in a way that actually feels like it's casting blame or something else. And so I think step one right there is very powerful for anybody in any position of leadership to own your own contribution first. And just to say, hey, I acknowledge this. It's a very disarming thing as opposed to this. So let me tell you why I got so excited when you originally said blame game. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think this is actually going to be the title of my next book, possibly. And I haven't shared this with anybody before. That's not true. There's a couple people very close to me that know about it. For many years, probably the last 4 years, before I engage with the group, before I go and work with a group, lead a workshop, even a keynote, something like that, I'm often asking them 2 questions to better empathize and understand their world. The first question, and there's no magic to this wording, but the first question is something like, what is one work-related problem that keeps you up at night? And so they fill out their answer to that, and this is in a survey tool electronically. The second question, the tool that I use called typeform.com, takes their answer to the first question and inserts it into the second question. And so it says, and what do you think is the root cause underlying that problem? And it fills it underlying and then fills in their problem. So what do you think is the root cause underlying, fill in the blank. And then what I do is take all of the responses to that group, and I actually just did this yesterday with a group of 200, the top 10% of leadership at a 2,000 person organization. And I turned all the responses into word clouds. And so the first question, what keeps you up at night in one word? This is the word cloud that showed up, right? So big words they showed up more frequently. So deadlines, I'm assuming volume of work. I saw staff. I don't think that's because they have too much staff. I think that's because they have too little staff. Notice what happens when I show you the second word cloud. So this is the same problems, but now I'm asked, what's the root underlying cause under those problems? What word shows up biggest then? Lack. Off mute, everybody. Say it with me. Because it's going to be the title of my next book, and I'll tell you why. But off mute, the biggest word that shows up, the root cause or problem is?
Lack.
Lack. So if you're a nerd like I am, you're going to want to Google the word lack and look at the etymology of that word. And essentially what it means in its original root is to blame. And so the list, I should actually pull this up real quick. This is from the group that I worked with yesterday. Let me see if I can find it quickly. From the group that I worked with yesterday, the lacks that made that word cloud were lack of assistant from other departments, lack of controls, lack of good role models, lack of organization, lack of staff, lack of trust, lack of understanding of a problem. When we say the root cause of something is a lack of blank, typically, and it's not with bad intentions, it includes a finger at somebody else. It's not saying I lack trust. It's that person lacks trust in me, or they don't trust our department, right? It's a they, you, not a we, us, them. All right, we, us, them, that doesn't make sense. A we, us format. I think the subtitle of the book might be, Lack, How to Avoid Blame Before You Get There. And I think, I haven't written the book yet, so I actually don't know what's gonna go inside. So sorry, this video is a really big disappointment. Let me ask you, what is one thing you could do or say to overcome lack, or to reframe lack? This is not an easy question. This is a thinking question. What is one thing you could do or say to overcome lack?
I wonder if teamwork would work there, teamwork, from the other departments, maybe where there's knowledge in another field at WSU Tech, get help from their department to come over and share some insights to your students. Whereas, like we're the feeder class from CNA to the nursing department.
Yeah, I think, Crystal, go ahead, and then I've got a thought.
What about reframing for strengths? What strengths do we have that we can leverage against this problem, or figure out how to fix the problem?
Yeah, Chip and Dan Heath wrote one of my favorite books, Made to Stick. And they also wrote one of my, it's not a favorite book, but it's a book called Switch. Actually, I think I have it. Switch. How to change things when change is hard. And one of my favorite ideas from the book related to this idea of reframing strengths is they encourage people to look for bright spots. So they shared an anecdote in the book where, did I spell that right? Ish? Where they were trying to solve malnutrition in a country that I'm blanking on the name of right now. And on one hand, you came in as the expert and said, oh, we know exactly how to solve malnutrition. Here's the solution. Educate, educate, educate. The other format was go in and look for the bright spots. Look for who is not malnourished in the community and invite yourself over for dinner. Say, hey, do you mind, the malnutrition seems to be a problem, but not for you. Do you mind teaching me how you've navigated around this? And what they found was, I don't remember the exact details of the story, you'll have to read the book, was that they essentially ate leaves that everybody else was discarding. So from this plant they were harvesting, everybody else was scrapping those leaves while this family was actually using them. And so the way that they implemented change in that organization was to actually ask that family to provide cooking classes for the community. So you see how that change from within by finding a bright spot, by finding strengths within the community. And so if something's not working in your class or in a department or a meeting, one of the ways that you could highlight strengths or think about that is, can you find a place where it is working and dissect it as a group together? And so I realize I'm a little bit heady here. Let me just full stop. Anybody have anything they want to say, share, or ask related to that?
I think communication.
Yeah. You want to say anything else about that?
Well, I know with WSU Tech, I feel more comfortable and connected if the administration, my supervisor, communicates with me what's going on in the department. Because I'm not right there all the time. I'm at, an outside class. And so I don't know what's going on all the time. But if they're communicating with me what's going on, I feel more connected to the problems, the issues, what's going on for the college itself, not only to our department, but the whole thing as a rule.
Yeah. Nobody likes to imagine that there are conversations happening behind closed doors that you can't have access to, or that you are actually kept out of. Now, obviously, you don't want to be a part of all conversations all the time, because that would be maddening. There's a really interesting group that you might want to look into called Buffer. They're a smaller company, it's a tech company, but one of their values is radical transparency. And so they actually, on their blog, share everything, all the messy stuff, all the good stuff with the world and their employees. And so I'm not recommending necessarily that you do or adopt that, but it's an interesting model just to look at, like, what does radical transparency look like in action, and how could that be leveraged? I think like every top level meeting would be so much more impactful if Steven with a camera was there right after the meeting to say, hey, can somebody just come over and give me the too long didn't read summary of this meeting that can be shared out with others? That meeting that you had would be so much more impactful if there was this live communication loop going back and forth. So really appreciate that. Strap, I feel like you had something, and then I want to officially end on time, and then if you want to continue for the third question, we can continue for a few more minutes. But go ahead, Strap.
So I want to like amalgamate what Joyce and Janet said. I think Joyce said teamwork and Janet said communication, but I would like to add network or networking, meaning being resourceful. I mean, lack is because we don't know where the resources are. So connecting those dots, you know, teamwork, communication, just network. And with being resourceful, you're taking the onus onto yourself. So there's a little bit of accountability there. So that takes away the blame game syndrome or thing.
Yeah, so the concept. So, by the way, I'm learning right now. I feel like I am like starting to write the book. Now I'll definitely give you royalties, Lynn. As I continue to study and break this down, the idea, one way to navigate around lack and avoid blame before it gets there is to constantly be asking the question, who else might be able and willing to help with this? Who else might know something that I don't know? Who else needs to be involved in creating this change right now? And the idea of going back to the very first thing that you said, Lynn, that if you enter a conversation saying, who else needs to be involved in this change, but you show up and own your own contribution to whatever dynamic, then that's the first thing that happens. I think that's starting to create very fertile ground for some good change to happen. And those are a couple thoughts on how to avoid the blame game.